This is Sexy Funny Raw, the podcast with me, adult film star and comedian Silvia Saige, here to discuss what you've only dared to ask Google. Undress, unzip, and unwind. The party starts now. Hey-o! Welcome back to another episode of Sexy Funny Raw. I'm Silvia Saige, and I am here with my guest co-host, someone I am so very proud to know, Mr. Josh Sabarra. Say hello, Josh.
Hi, Silvia. I'm so happy. I could not be happier to be here.
I wore my lubes in today because I was like...
Wait, we have to be clear in your line of work. We're talking Louboutins. Yes, her red bottoms.
They're so uncomfortable.
I love a red bottom. In more ways than one.
I know you do. And I cannot wait to dive in and talk about it. Our guest for today is fellow comedian and director, writer, man of many hats, Mr. Michael Malone. Say hello to the people, Michael.
Hey, how are you? It's good. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, seriously, this group of guests is like my favorite group. So I'm so excited.
I mean, I've been here only once, and it's my favorite so far.
I'm your favorite in general. Let's just lay that out there.
That could be true.
We were forced into meeting, Josh.
We were.
Yes.
It was sort of, we were set up as friends.
Yeah, absolutely. Like,
isn't that interesting?
3 or 4 different people in my life were like, you have to meet this man. You guys would get along so well. And I'm not going to lie, I didn't do any research about you. I thought they were trying to like hook us up. I didn't know you were gay. And
okay,
so I was like, okay, I guess I got to go meet this guy. Like, fuck it, I'm in. Like, everybody tells me, like, we're going to be soulmates.
So you thought you were getting a husband.
Totally.
And here I'm like, oh, I'm going to have a new girlfriend. Somebody to shop for shoes with.
Yeah, exactly. And that's not what it was. But we were forced into this friendship, and I'm very happy about it.
Listen, our friends were right on.
No, they were spot on. They were like, you guys got to meet, and they were right. And I'm in the midst of reading your first book right now, and I'm so bummed I haven't finished it because I'm like 30 pages away from being done.
You're
and
so close and yet a world away.
Oh my God, it's so good. Like, I can't put it down. I don't have a lot of spare time, but I'm like waking up at 6 a.m. to read this book. Like,
well, I appreciate that.
So well written.
Thank you.
Amazing. And everyone should go out and get their own copy.
Yes, they absolutely should.
Absolutely should. I'm going to start by introducing both my co-host and my guest for today. So Mr. Josh Sabarra, following a sold-out standing room only events at Barnes & Noble flagship stores, Josh's memoir, Porn Again, is a best-selling currently option. Why can I not read today?
Because
Josh's memoir, Porn Again, is a best-selling, currently option in a development for TV. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's so exciting. Yeah. His second book, Enemies Closer, also received critical acclaim. The novel has been optioned as a possible television series, and Sabarra is currently working on his third book. I can't wait.
He is.
I can't wait. As a TV personality, producer, and marketing executive, Josh appeared regularly on 20th Television's The New Ricky Lake Show, where he was also lead producer. He is a frequent on-air contributor.
Yes.
Wow. To CNN and the executive producer of a hit Lifetime film, 11th Victim. For the Hallmark Channel, he executive produces the popular Haley Dean Mystery series with a new episode slated to air through 2021. Recently, Josh served as Senior Vice President of Corporate Communications and Publicly for A&E and Lifetime Networks, responsible for high-profile and successful launches as such series as Project Runway and Sony's hit comedic drama Drop Dead Diva. If I could read, it would help, but it is so impressive. And reading through your book, I just learned so much about you, and the fact that you were so driven so early, right out of the gate, is so impressive because no one does that.
But, there's nothing like being marginalized to fuel a drive.
Trust me,
when people tell you that you can't or that you're not good enough or you feel not good enough, there's sort of this drive to prove them wrong.
The only reason I'm succeeding currently.
Only reason. And, I'm not saying that, it's any motivation is good, but ultimately what you have to learn, and I think part of the journey that Porn Again takes people on is getting to the point that you realize that the drive has to be for yourself and that you're succeeding for yourself. And I think now, and you probably see this being an active user of social media, Michael, I don't know if you are.
Oh yeah.
You are, okay.
Our careers.
Yeah, I have to be.
Yeah. I mean, it's sort of it's sort of a necessary
Yeah.
thing now, and it's one of those things that you really have to know yourself and manage how much time and energy you put into what you see on social media, because there's this whole sort of compare and despair phenomenon.
Yeah.
And I think it worries me for young people, because so much depression is now linked to social media and how people see or perceive success of others and then think that they're not up to speed or they're not doing as well as somebody else.
Yeah, I think depression is more rampant because of social media now, and because and spoiler alert thing is you're never going to be happy if you're comparing yourself to these ideas that other people are setting. You're never going to have that money that Jay-Z's talking about. You're never gonna look like Hugh Jackman or whatever. Like you're never going to achieve these goals because
I've
they're
had enough
so
plastic
high.
surgery to get close.
Exactly. Well, that's what I'm saying is like you see all these young women who are comparing themselves to blank Kardashian,
Right?
And it's like, well, you're not going to achieve that. You might get close. You might
because
get
you
this,
don't
you might
have
get
millions.
That. And even when you do, you're not going to be
Right.
a Kardashian. You're just not
But
going to do it.
even if you look at it on a smaller level, like people who not necessarily may not be as financially well off, but that you look at other people who are in similar lines of work, or I see she just got a such and such, or this one just, and you sort of measure your own worth or your self-worth based on how other people are doing. And the thing is, you kind of have to stay in your lane. You have to learn to stay in your lane and realize that nobody else's success affects yours.
Yeah.
Like somebody else getting a 5-book deal does not affect the book that I'm working on now.
Right. And that's the thing about changing your perspective. I heard the story. It was in a book. What was that book? The has fuck in the title. It's a self-help book.
That
bright orange cover.
Yeah.
Oh, I know what you're talking about. The subtle art of not giving a fuck.
The subtle art of not giving a fuck. He tells a great
Great book.
story about this band that had a drummer in it, and or it was lead guitarist. And they signed a deal, and they got a world tour happening and all this stuff. And the day before they left, the lead guitarist gets fired, and they let him go. And they went on to be like this huge band and whatever. This guy strived to make his own band. He's like, you know what? I'm going to go back home. I'm going to reconfigure things.
Yeah.
I'm going to create a super band. I'm going to crush these guys. And he did. He sold millions of records, and he went on world tour and da-da-da-da-da. Those two bands are Metallica, he was in, and then he got kicked out, and he made Megadeth.
Yeah.
And he's still, the book talks about it, he's still miserable over not being in Metallica, even though he's Megadeth.
Right. He had success regardless.
Change your perspective. Your life is great. You did achieve the things. You did go on world tour. You did get these records. You did do this. But just because you're setting your sights on I'm not Metallica, you think your life is fucking ruined. And you're like, it's not. You did it, man. You did it.
But I think it's, and listen, I think social media, I think there are a lot of great things about social media, but there is that dark side to everything. One thing that I found interesting was I had done an article for Healthline about the increase in people having numbers of people having plastic surgery. And one of the, a therapist mentioned this to me, as well as one of the plastic surgeons, that it used to be 20 years ago, people would come in and they'd bring a picture from a magazine and they'd say, I want to have this nose. I want to have these eyes. Now they bring in a picture of themselves that's been filtered through social media. And they say, I want to look like this version of me.
Yeah.
So it's interesting how even that has gotten us to a point where we feel we need to look like this version of ourselves that's so highly curated. And I mean, I'm guilty of it too.
I don't know the last time I put a picture on Instagram that I didn't do that swipe over filter that just cleans your face up.
Yeah,
I have no dark circles under my eyes in real life.
I'm so much prettier with one swipe. So impressive.
I wish I could swipe you in real life right now. Just to, clean up. Oh, no, I'm kidding.
It's makeup.
You're gorgeous
I swipe
in
myself
person
in makeup.
and on camera. I've seen both.
Thank you, my dear. All right, before we get going too much further, I'm going to introduce Michael as well, because I have already introduced you as my comedian friend, but let's go a little bit deeper into that. So Michael is an award-winning stand-up comedian, of course, film director and writer, as I did mention before. In 2012, Michael won the Seattle International Comedy Competition. From there, he was named 2013's Hot Comic to Watch. In 2014, he was voted the top 5 comedy performers in the U.S. college market, and then Michael released his second comedy album via Uproar Records in 2015, titled 31. This album became top 10 best-selling album on iTunes as well. Impressive. Michael has been featured in Comedy Central's Badass Bitches of History, Season 2 of Showtime's drama series I'm Dying Up Here, Punchlines, and on Fox Television's The Bob and Tom Show, XM Radio, 24/7 Common Radio, Fusion, WGN, Comcast, and on-demand Hulu's Comedy
I'm
Time.
exhausted by how much he works.
The CW in the 2 last seasons of Laughs on Fox. He was also the lead in the comedy horror cult classic film Chopping Block. In 2016, Michael went overseas with the Armed Forces Entertainment Tour and performed for the U.S. military in 11 different countries.
And he's a do-gooder.
I know, right? He resides in Los Angeles, California, and writes a monthly column for Face the Current magazine, and is creator behind the unique podcast Punched Up, which he needs to have me on, and the illuminated series The Good Doctor on the Funny or Die Network, and the NSFW Nature Show on Laugh Factory's YouTube channel, Motherfucking Nature. Michael is also the co-writer and director of award-winning film Bethlehem, which I've seen. Fantastic. Michael also has a 1-hour comedy special going out this fall called Laugh After Death. Impressive, sir.
Thanks.
You guys are both so much more impressive than I. It's very sad, but that's why I wore the lubes. Do you understand?
There's no competition. Levels
Change your
perspective. That's what we were
No,
just talking about.
change your perspective. Change your perspective. But no, it's great. Super impressive.
Thank you.
Yeah. What I love is that you are writing about your dealings with death, because as I know, but I'm sure that the rest of the people don't know, you have lost both of your parents.
Yeah.
And you are an only child.
Yeah, it's been a weird transition the last few years, and I just steered away from it for so long on stage, and then I started doing this big closer about just about what it was like losing them, and like, because I continued to be on tour. I was touring 46 weeks a year on the road, and then I lost my stepfather Wayne, and I have a real dad. Everybody has a real dad. Fish have fathers. My real dad passed when I was 12, and he was on everything but the right path. And so Wayne was kind of like my dad. He stepped in when I was 15 and kind of raised me from there, and just the savior of my family. Right. And so I lost Wayne when I was 30, and then a year after that, I lost my mother. Mm-hmm. And so I started talking about that on stage, talking about how I didn't know what to do with those feelings, and because I grew up in Ohio. Like, nobody goes to therapy in Ohio. You tell somebody you're sad in the Midwest, like, we're all sad. Right. Okay, I'm gonna go back to work. So I didn't know what to do with that, and so I started talking about it on stage, and the reactions that I was getting from people afterwards was a connection like I had never had with an audience before. People were coming up and hugging me and telling me, we just lost our father, we just lost our brother, we just lost this. And there's a couple in Chicago that came up to me, and they said that her husband, they were having problems, and he was in this near-death car crash, and it brought them back together and saved their family in this weird way. And like, it was just I had a guy in Phoenix come up to me, and this guy came out and gave me a big hug, and he starts crying on my shoulder, and he said, I lost my mother last year. And he goes, we would come out to comedy shows all the time, and he goes, this is her anniversary of her death, and he goes, I came out here by myself just to kind of like, of feel like I was with her again, and I don't do that closer all the time. Like, I was doing it very, very rare. If the crowd was good, if I felt like I could, you can't do that with every crowd. They're like, they want dick jokes. Right. They want a lot of them. Right. So you can't be like, let me tell you about my dead dad. Like, more dick jokes. So I would do it very sparingly, and then and so when those moments, when those people would share those stories with me, like that guy in Phoenix, it felt right. It felt like, oh, okay, I did that when I was supposed to, in a weird way. And I'm not spiritual or religious or any of those things, and so it was more like a.
But Jesus lives in you.
Exactly, in all of us.
Well, I have a question. So the old equation of tragedy plus time equals comedy.
Yeah.
How much time?
My mother passed 5 years ago, and I started. What's interesting is when Wayne passed, I'd stayed home with my mother for 2 weeks, and I went right back on tour.
Right.
And I had a weekend in North Carolina, and I was still talking. I was doing jokes about Wayne, as if he were still around, and I felt dirty. I remember coming off stage and being like, I just feel like I'm lying to these people. Like, nobody knows. Nobody's gonna track me down to the show and be like, wait a minute, that guy's dead.
Yeah. Well, there's an element of embellishment. But
it just felt like a fraud.
Right.
And it was so weird. Is like so that Saturday night I went up and I started doing it in past tense, and I had opened up about Wayne. That was the first night that I opened it. So it was 2 weeks afterwards, and I had just mentioned like, hey, we just lost Wayne and this and that, and I kind of told the crowd. And that night, in the weird way that the universe works, this older guy that kind of resembled Wayne, had a big mustache and this and that, and it was the first time I had ever smelled Wayne's cologne
outside of him,
outside of Wayne, ever. In all of my travels and all the thing, it was the only time. And this guy reeked of Wayne, and he came up and he gave me a hug, and he was like, "Good show tonight." And it was nothing out of the ordinary. It wasn't like a moving moment. He was just like, "Yeah, good show," and gave me a hug or whatever, and he left. But it was like,
"Can I have your shirt?"
Yeah, hold me longer.
You must get that a lot.
It's my panties.
Yeah, exactly.
Sylvia's had similar experiences.
Old guys are like, hold you a little longer.
Yeah, there definitely is that. Do you feel like it pushed you though to like work harder and do more?
Because of the material. Because death is not easy to talk about on stage.
Yeah.
It is a fucking buzzkill,
or to deal with in your personal life. So
yeah, and that was the. I still didn't seek out therapy until after Mom passed, and then I was in an 8-year relationship, and when that kind of went away, I was alone in my studio apartment in Hollywood. I had no shows on the books. I had no, I was engaged, so I had no fiance. I had no parents. I'm just sitting alone in the studio apartment, like, well, this sucks. What do we do now? And I never been to therapy, like I said, and I didn't have that great of an experience about it. And I talk about that in the special as well, about how the system is broken. You hear it all the time, how it's broken for Army vets and regular people and homeless people. Like, it's a broken fucking system. I mean, you don't know until you try to participate. And
also finding, a therapist is like a real relationship in your life. So finding the right person, and what I always found is, I claim I have the best therapist. And I'll fight people over that. But it's interesting because I always feel like when you go to a therapist, and you have to find that person, and you feel like you have to tell them, you have to get them up to speed and get them to a point. And so it feels like a lot of work to get somebody up to the point where they sort of are with you in your current space. And so to me, like finding that, when you finally find that person, and then you can, relax. And
when did you find that person?
I had one therapist for a number of years, and I really
liked her. In your childhood or as an adult?
No, as an adult.
Okay.
The first time I went to therapy was right before I came out.
Oh, wow.
Because I had never said to anybody, I'd never even said to anybody that I was gay.
Where did you grow up?
In Florida.
Okay, yeah.
South Florida. And I'd never said it out loud. And so I felt like I needed to go to somebody who was a neutral person, not friends who say, we're so happy for you, this is going to be great, we always knew. Somebody who had no interest in me except that she was getting $200 an hour to be there. And so that's when I actually started going to therapy. And then I realized that I had a lot to unpack. Now so I had gone for a while and then hadn't been going for a little bit because my life got kind of busy, and then I sort of realized that it was important for me to have a place to go. Not even for anything specific, just because once a week it's great for me to go somewhere for an hour.
Just download,
and I don't even have to ask how her kids are.
Yeah.
Like I can do my
Totally
favorite thing.
one-sided.
I can do my favorite thing, which is talk about myself.
Yeah, it's everyone's favorite
For
thing.
an
Who are we
hour.
kidding?
Yeah.
Right. And I feel like it just gives me a perspective. It like reframes my week.
Yeah.
And it gives me a perspective. The things that I think are going wrong or good, it's sort of just like, okay, let's step back for a minute and
Gives
see
you
what's
perspective.
really what's really at the root of all this, and it's just a different way to
Yeah, because you don't want to unload that on a partner and like all that stuff.
Well, I'll
Yeah.
unload it on anyone who listens.
So do I, and that's a real problem. I was like, I need to see a therapist because I don't even like on a first date. I'll be like, look,
Look, sometimes I feel like I need to write my book editor an extra check. I'm like, wait, is this therapy or editing?
yeah.
I've been saving money. I've just been shopping at Trader Joe's more. I mean, those people care about you so much. Every time I'm there, it's like a half-hour checkout. They're like, "How are you? Are your chakras aligned?" You're like, "I'm just
Listen,
here."
they love me.
I
At
don't-
salt,
bread.
they love me at Salt and Straw.
I love me some Salt and Straw. I can't do Trader Joe's, Whole Foods, all that kind of stuff. It's because of how the registers are.
Yeah.
The checkout registers weird me out, and unless I have like only 2 items, I can't do it.
See, I can't do it because
I feel real uncomfortable. That also.
Have you ever found a it's like they find the worst parking lot in LA and they're like, let's put a Trader Joe's here.
No, that's parking out here. That's parking here.
But for some reason, they always have like it's on the
like an
wrong side of the
underground
street
lair.
and
It's
you
like-
can't get into it. You're always in danger of getting your car dinged. Like it's the worst place to park.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, come everyone at me because I'm just telling you, pay attention to Trader Joe's parking.
Kurt, you're not driving that green car downstairs, are you? That said like Jesus loves you or something. Okay, great.
Because you're in the wrong room.
I was about no.
You're about.
No,
to get
only
an
because
iron.
that car is parked in 2 parking spaces, and I had to walk 2 blocks, and I like wanted to key their car, and it said "Jesus loves you" on the back, and I was like, "Oh, you're just as dumb on the outside."
Well, I keep these little cards in my car that just say "nice parking."
And you put them on
and I
their
leave
car.
them on people's it gives me a little bit. It just makes me feel a little more.
I wanted to
English.
leave them a note really bad, and I might still when we leave if their car is still there.
Yeah, I want to
Just
start
a heads
parking
up.
shaming people on like
You should.
Instagram and stuff. Like in my neighborhood, they do that a lot where they take up 2 spots because they just don't park evenly. And you're like, what do you do? And like, I want to start taking
Making it
pictures
harder
of
for
license plates and
everyone.
parking and just like parking shame people. I wish
I mean,
that
and no
was a
offense, but if
thing.
you're gonna take up 2 spots, don't be in like an Impala.
yeah, yeah,
Okay.
Because I also have a theory about like cars that like when people honk at you, when you're like look down. Not that I'd ever text and be in the car, but
We don't do that.
Sometimes I'll look down for let's say a moment,
Yeah,
a light, and
right.
people here are so anxious to move on and
I
they
know.
honk. And I have this theory like you can't honk down.
What do
I mean, you can't honk up.
What
Sorry.
do you mean by that?
Like for example, like.
yeah.
Like if you're in like
you're in like an
if you're
old
in like a
jalopy.
Dodge,
Oh,
if you're in a Dodge,
okay.
you better not fucking honk at a Porsche.
I got
Yeah,
you.
yeah, yeah.
Okay, I didn't. Okay,
And
see.
a Porsche probably shouldn't like honk at the Lamborghini.
Okay, see, I drive a Chevy and I honk
So
at
you better
everybody.
just fucking not honk.
Yeah.
You better lay off the horn. That's all I'm saying.
I honk
And by the way, I'm
flip.
totally kidding because I am not. I have no interest in cars. Like cars, you could put me in
Yeah.
anything, and you could put me in like a scooter. I'm fine.
I'm
I don't
also
care.
a psychopath on the road. Like I have no children and no one to live for. I will murder you and your family. And like I do this when like I'll honk and flip people off, but then I do this motion where I'm like pow 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 to people.
Which might be a little
Wow.
dangerous these days.
Wow.
I'm just saying I'm not afraid to die for you.
Like a
That's what
woman
I'm
with
saying.
nothing to lose.
That's what
Yeah.
I'm
is a
saying.
very dangerous one.
Super dangerous.
I just shame point at people. I'll drive by and I'll just point.
See,
I'm
that,
like, you know
I
what
think-
you're doing.
see,
I
I
know
think
you're fucking
that-
up.
I think that is more
Yeah,
unsettling.
I don't flip them off. I
Yeah.
don't yell. I just point like, you know you're fucking
You
up.
know what you did. You know it
Yes.
was you.
Shame.
Okay, so both of you are multifaceted in so many different areas. I mean, I do porn and comedy. That's,
Its
Okay.
own multi.
it is its own. It's its own. Yeah, I can take on multiple things at once.
Yeah.
We've seen.
And, but I want to know, like, what do you love the most? What is your true passion?
For me,
both
it's
of you?
writing. It's the
Writing.
writing. Yeah.
See, and you're so fucking good at it. It is like so descriptive in everything that you write. Like
you.
I've never read a book I've loved more, and it's not because you're here. Like
Well,
it's
I
just
appreciate
truly.
that. Listen, you know what? It's to me being able to come up with a way to, to craft something that somebody can relate to or find themselves in.
Yeah.
Or, there's a huge satisfaction that for me.
Yeah.
So I really like that. I mean, and I sort of writing. I was in marketing and PR as you mentioned for years and years and years, and writing is an aspect of that. But it's become less and less. Like now that press releases have become tweets. It used to be you'd write a 2-page press release. Now you put out 240 characters on Twitter.
Yeah.
So the writing part of that side of the business sort of went away.
Yeah.
And I think it was the one thing that was sort of, I don't think I have any other creative talent. I can't sing, dance, nothing. But that was one thing.
That's not true. I read in your book that you're quite a little dancer and entertainer.
Well, I did take the tap
school.
dancing. Well, yes, but not. You wouldn't want to see me now at a club. So I feel like that was sort of the one creative talent that I had, and I sort of came to it later, like in terms of doing it professionally. So it was.
It's your true love.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I love it. And you're
never
so
mind
good
the
at
fact that I didn't find it till I was in my late 30s, but.
Well, you didn't find a lot of things until you were in your 30s.
Well, there you go. I don't know what she's talking about.
What do you think, Michael? What do you think is your passion at this point?
I've thought about this a lot because I'm really loving the directing. I'm trying to do more of that, and I love acting and all that, and comedy, of course. I've been doing it since I was 19. But I think if I have to pinpoint it, it's storytelling, right? Because that bleeds into all of it. And so I love sharing these stories. And whether it's on stage during stand-up or whether I'm writing a short story or a script or whatever, that's essentially what I'm doing, just storytelling.
So what about a book for you?
I'm trying.
Oh, really?
I'm such a I'm a big picture person, so I can map out a script and do all that stuff. But as far as sitting down, what I struggle with is being interior, afternoon.
Right.
Guy comes home. That is boring to me. And I can punch up, I can do all the other stuff, but actually sitting down and doing the filling in is
But
terrible.
I think that's with anybody who does any sort of creative thing. I mean, there are people who write who they will tell you they're great at plotting, but they're not great at writing the prose. They'll come up with a really clever way to pace and plot a book. And then there are people who they're not that great at coming up with a plot outline, but once you give it to them, they can write the shit out of it.
Right, yeah.
So not everybody's perfect at every aspect of it. It's just sort of finding the balance, which... I mean,
that's what I've written a few things.
Speaking to you, I feel like maybe that's something in your future.
Yeah, I'm working. I'm trying to put together because I was trying to do this almost like a multimedia book where it was short little jokes and then big stories and then some illustrations and stuff like that, and some of the stuff because my mother left behind. This is a cool little thing. She hid notes in books, and she left me little things and stuff for me to find eventually and all that. Obviously much sooner than later than we thought. But so when I was going through her house, I found poems and letters and
that's great.
and she would
That's
cook all
really
the time.
amazing.
So she had these recipes, and so I wanted to put a book together that was these stories about my life, and in between these big stories you would have either these short little jokes that whatever, and then share a recipe or a letter that my mom wrote and show her handwriting on one page and her the actual typed out letter on the other, and just make it kind of almost like a scrapbook kind of thing. So I was trying to piece that together, and that's kind of what I've been slowly working on.
Don't give up on that. It's a good concept.
Yeah, I really like it.
Your mom was super supportive of your career. I can't even believe that you went into comedy at 19 and she was like, "Yeah, do it."
Yeah, well, she was always, she was. I mean, she was a regular parent where she wanted, a backup plan of sorts.
Did you go to college?
I signed up for college.
Okay.
Never really.
I mean,
went.
points for putting your name on the top of the SAT test. You get 200 points just for that.
Right.
Exactly.
And then you get Felicity Huffman to get you your score.
That's what I was missing. I went to college for computer programming. I went for a semester, and then I started doing dick jokes at night. And so I was most people are hiding drugs and all this stuff from their parents. I was hiding
comedy.
dick jokes. it's like my mom can't find this joke book. And then eventually she came out to shows and she would watch, and then it was like, hey, I haven't been going to school. And she's like, what? And it was, you know, we had that conversation, and she was always for like some kind of backup plan to be like, well, why don't you do? And
how were you making money though? Because comedy does not pay right out of the gate.
Not out of the gate. I was, you know, I was working full time, and then at night I was driving 2 or 3 hours to do 10 minutes in Dayton, Ohio, or wherever. And you know, you slowly build like that, and then it was a weird thing because you know, the motivation was just that. It was like I never had a fallback plan. And I think the people that have these plan Bs or this fallback idea of like, if I can't make this, then I guess I'll. Well, then that's what you're gonna fucking do because you're not all in. If you're free falling, you're gonna find a way to like. You're gonna make the parachute work.
Well, it's sort of like that, you know, necessity's the mother of invention. When you have to, you figure it out.
Yeah, and that's what it was. You know? I was 19. I didn't know what the fuck else to do. This is what I wanted to do, and I just had to make it work. And I just kept doing it and doing it and doing it until it did start paying those bills, and I was able to, you know, I started touring when I was 23, 24 or something like that.
And you know what's funny? I mean, obviously to be a good, I think people who do comedy obviously have to be bright because you know there's an art to being able to deliver information a certain way and know your audience. There's an intuition involved. Like it's a real craft. But it's interesting that you said about going to school versus not going to school, because I always stand by, you know, some of the smartest people I know are not educated. You know, being
coming
educated,
from our dual degree, you have what, dual masters or something like that?
Not masters.
Okay, wait. Pretty impressive though.
But you know, being smart does not mean being educated, and being educated does not mean being smart. I know plenty of people who've gone to wonderful schools, and I would not count them as my most literate friends.
100%.
And I know plenty of people who have not gone to college, who I would say are some of the brightest people I know. So, you know, that in and of itself is...
Well, if you look at artists in general throughout our time, like, you know, these people that have these ideas are normally artists. You know, your John Lennons, you're in comedy, your Bill Hicks, your Pryors, you know what I mean? Like these guys that were talking about really fucking introspective things. Doing crack, you know, hanging out and, you know, being with the people. And I think that's where the education comes, is when you're surrounded by the people, you know what I mean? And that's why comedians tend to strive in that area, is because we are a direct line to the population. We are drinking with these people after the shows. We are hanging out with them. We're staying in these shitty hotels. We're doing the you know what I mean? Like, we're with
Speak for
the
yourself,
people.
Michael. I have a certain agenda with my hotel.
Listen, I've slept in a back of a Honda more than once, and that's the thing. But where these educated people are coming, these scholars, you know, they're used to this education, going to college, and coming from, you know, just somewhat wealthy families into these wealthy colleges, and they're coming out and not knowing the struggles of the real people and whatever. And that's how it kind of bleeds into, you know, politics, like we were talking earlier, politics in the Senate. All these people, they have no connection with regular people at all. They have no idea what it means to miss a paycheck and have it fucking ruin your whole life. Where comedians do. I've had to wait on $500 before. It's the fucking worst. $500 should not be a lot of money. It is.
But what is it they say that that in America the average family is like a $400 problem to cripple the family.
Yeah, I mean, and you have those come up all the time, whether it's car or dental or health or whatever.
And that most families are one accident or problem away from.
I was this person until a year ago. Like, what are we talking about? Like, I was living this life continuously, like on a regular basis.
I mean, it's a reality.
Absolutely, and it happens so much quicker than you ever think it could. Like, I grew up pretty affluent. I mean, we lived in like a, you know, middle class society, and my dad, you know, had money I never wanted or needed for anything. And then I came out to LA, and it was a hell of a lot more expensive than I ever thought. And my dad was like, well, we're done giving you money at this point, like, figure it out. And I was homeless for a year out here because I'd also let my credit slip. So no one was giving me an apartment because I had a 400 credit score. And they were like, ma'am, I think you need to
wait, I wonder if Felicity
look
Huffman
into...
can help with that.
I think you need to look into
your
credit.
She's good with SAT scores. I don't know if she can buy you credit.
No, it took a long time to, like, get everything back up. And, like, I had to pay off all this stuff, which I learned now I probably shouldn't have paid off. I probably should have talked to a debt person about it, but I didn't know. I just kept sending in all this money until
Well, because
finally
that's not
points
the
would go
education that
up.
we get coming up. There's no
Exactly,
education. There's no real life education happening.
Yeah.
It's all book stuff. And so when it comes to actual life shit, you have no idea. When you first get your apartment, you're like, oh, Wi-Fi is $89. Like,
Well,
what?
do you ever feel like I look at I think about my age sometimes, and I look at things and I'm like, I'm not equipped to deal with this. I'm not an adult. Now, then I look back and I think about the fact that at this point, I am older than my parents were when they were dealing with me in high school.
Yeah, that
I wouldn't know how to deal with some of the things they were dealing with and going up to school on our behalf, or things that had to happen. And my parents were functioning adults taking care of 2 kids. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
Like, I still feel like I'm not even like equipped to be an adult.
Yeah, I think that all the time.
That's such an interesting thing too when you look back at those fights and stuff that you had with your parents, or you know just all the things in childhood, and you think, and now you're either there or their age or older now. Correct. And you're like,
sadly,
they were dealing with all that shit.
Yeah.
Right.
And they were just trying to fucking make it happen, just like I'm trying to make it fucking happen.
Right.
And you don't realize that when you're in it.
Yeah.
And that's something that comes with age. And you look back, and I think that is a bonding thing with you and your parents eventually.
Yeah.
Right.
Because you feel like your parents know everything. They must. They're your parents.
They're
They're the ones in
superheroes.
charge
you
of
give
everything.
Them sort of this they just sort of get this credibility.
Yeah.
Because they're adults and they're parents. I mean, even when you look back, like, do you ever think about people? I don't know if you had babysitters or people like, and I used to look at them and be like, wow, they're adults.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They were 16.
Yeah,
Right.
16, yeah.
Yes, 100%.
So,
reading from your babysitters, you had some great babysitting stories growing up. Your babysitters were like helping you watch porn and like.
Well, the first thing I ever saw was Caligula because of our next door neighbor.
That is insane to me.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't know anything about sexuality until like I was in it. Like, I had to learn it as I went. Like, and I even had an older brother. And I remember like them telling me like little things like about like wet dreams, and I was like baffled that you guys like come in your sleep.
Right, but
you know?
see, my father is a urologist.
So you had it all. Your
So
family is
dinner
so
table
open.
Conversation is your podcast.
Right. Yeah. No,
You know,
it really is. Like reading
yeah.
your book, it's so
Yeah.
intuitive. Like, I don't want to give away too much either, but
Right.
the conversations you have with your mom, I'm just
Right.
like, I would
Right.
never be able to have those
I mean,
conversations.
when I was-
very similar. My mother and I were so close.
Really?
And we would openly, there was no filter with her.
Right.
And other kids would
I
comment
had
on
the
that.
same thing.
Yeah, they'd
I
be
had the
like,
same
how do you
thing.
talk to your mom? I'm like,
Well, my mother would say, it was funny because there's a portion in the book where I was working, I was a Hollywood executive. I was working around the clock because I sort of dove into my professional life so that I didn't have to face the personal life.
yeah.
And so for sometimes sex, I would hire an escort, right? And I would say to my mother,
Nothing wrong with that.
This is
listen,
before Tinder,
sex work
yeah.
is work. And I would say, no, it was during,
Yeah,
I mean,
during
I
Tinder
actually
times.
both, I mean, there were
Right.
different ways of doing it, but I would say to my mom, like I would say to my mother, like I would say to her, I think just like getting a massage. I'd be like,
Right.
I think I'm going to have somebody over tonight because I knew that I wasn't going to get home till 10. And if I had somebody there from 10:30, and then I could, I always say with a hooker, you don't pay them for sex, you pay them to leave
leave.
after, right? So I would say from 10:30, they'd come, they'd be gone by 11:30. I could get to sleep, be up the next morning to do what it was very efficient. It was a very
Right.
practical, systematic way of dealing with something that,
It's
was
it's human nature.
need.
I'm glad you brought this
Yeah.
up because this is
Okay.
the one thing I did want to tackle from your book today. Okay, so at one
I'm sad
point,
there's just one.
I know, but at one point you were engaging with an escort and you thought maybe you were developing feelings
Yeah.
for this escort and it
Yes.
became a real situation. You guys
Right.
stopped exchanging money and
Correct.
you went on real dates.
Right.
And you said to a friend that this man had kind of like ghosted you. He had disappeared, like said he was going to call you and then he didn't. And
Right.
your friend said to you, you can't be surprised that he disappeared. He's a porn star and a hooker. What kind of standard were you holding him to? What were you even thinking?
Right.
And to me,
And isn't that interesting that that's somebody's perception of
that's
sex work?
everyone's perspective of a sex
Right.
worker. That
Right.
that we can't possibly be human beings capable of real emotion.
Right.
Now, should we tell the people what happened with the sex worker? I don't know if you want to
Yeah, I
divulge too
mean,
much.
it was. Let's just say it ended in a very sad, tragic way.
Right. His
and-
life was taken.
And the reason that he wasn't, it was in my mind all about me, and it had nothing to do with me. He had passed away, and that's why I stopped hearing from him.
Right.
And
Not because he was incapable of love or feeling.
Right. And the first thing and the reason I put that in the book was very deliberate.
Yeah.
Because the first thing that people jump to is they look for, first of all, in defense of the person who said that, you're trying to comfort.
I know.
Right, yeah.
So he's saying to me, don't feel rejected. Why would you, and that's the first thing we do. We put other people down so we feel better about ourselves. It's not a good way of operating, but it's the way most people deal with things, right? We feel better when we say, oh, but we can write them off because.
Right.
So it's very easy when you do work that people don't understand, such as sex work, that it's very easy to have people write you off or be dismissive. And I think that that's why I put that in there.
Yeah.
Because to me it was important to see that was, and then to put it in your terms, the punchline to that is that was nothing about why I wasn't hearing from him.
Right.
And to me, that the juxtaposition of hearing that and then finding out what that person was struggling with.
Right.
And that it had nothing to do with me, and had nothing to do with the kind of work he was doing, but rather that he had other kinds of problems in his life.
Other demons.
I felt humanized.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so that was the reason I put that in there.
Thank you.
I think that's a problem that's a very American problem. You know what I mean? I feel like
when a hooker dies.
Yes, God, don't you hate it? No, when
such an American issue.
But
why is
also
that not in the debates?
But also, no one cares. To be honest with you,
when you judge somebody by the status of their job, you know what I mean? Like, your friends so quick to write them off with this no emotion, no feeling thing, is because it's that job status thing. And I think in America we have such a status envy, like we were talking about earlier. When you're flipping through your social media, you want to be this or that, and you want to have these titles, and so it's so easy to dismiss somebody who is a janitor or less than, whatever you view as less than.
But see, I was always
family,
raised,
your point of view.
I was always raised that everybody's sort of on an even playing field.
Right.
So for me, anybody who's doing honest work, anyone who's putting in work to earn money, that's fine. I have plenty of friends. The way the job market is right now, I have plenty of friends who are professional people who have worked in all kinds of executive jobs. One of whom I recently saw working in a restaurant. And it was a little awkward, I think, when I walked in, and I think he felt, and I'm like, you know what? You're doing honest work.
Yeah.
And you know what? I would have no problem with that.
Yeah.
If I needed to do that in order to get the next book done so that there was an income, more of an income until the next part of the advance comes, I'm happy to work at Bloomingdale. I mean, Bloomingdale's, you're like, could you at least do Barney's? So I could get my Louboutin discount.
Right.
But
Target.
you're like, could you pick somewhere that I shop?
Yeah.
But no, to me, there is absolutely no shame in doing honest work. And I don't care what that is.
Yeah.
And there's nothing I'm above doing.
Yeah. I know tons of comics that are killers, absolute killers on stage.
Yeah.
And they're driving Uber.
Yeah.
And you're
honestly, though, I wish I could drive for Uber. Let me just say that. If I didn't have a DUI on my record, I would be driving for Uber. I'd still be sucking dick. Don't get me wrong. But,
could you do that while you're driving?
I'm seeing a mess up here.
Talk about, you said you're a multitasker.
Right.
Uber XXL.
XXX. No, but because you get to meet so many interesting people, and especially in LA, I wouldn't want to do it in Kansas City or Ohio or somewhere boring like that. I'd want to do it here in Los Angeles, or I probably wouldn't want to do it in New York either, because I would hate driving in New York. But just here in Los Angeles, I would too. But because you get to meet so many people, and you get to just hear their stories and their interactions, and I feel like you'd get so many more stories off of.
Spoiler alert: everybody
rides.
has a screenplay. I mean, every Uber driver's like, "Let me tell you about what I'm working on." And you're like, "Oh God, here we go."
That's what I love about LA is everybody is working on something.
Right.
Everybody does have some sort of drive, and no matter how ridiculous it sounds to any individual person, I'm sure that my dream sounds ridiculous. Now I've always said I want to do for sexuality what Ellen DeGeneres did for being gay, because I feel like Ellen DeGeneres made being a gay person not only acceptable, but like something desirable. It's like a desirable
she brought it into
aspect.
the mainstream.
Yeah. And brought it to where there's gay men kissing in movies and screens, and it's not a weird aspect any longer. And that's what I want to do for sexuality, is like make it to where it's an everyday conversation and we're not weirded out by these things any longer.
Well, because what you find is that, I mean, first of all, it's a very human thing. I mean, sexuality is a huge part of human behavior.
Only reason we're here.
And people, first of all, there shouldn't be shame attached to it. And I think that's a big thing. I think we grow up a lot. I think it depends on how you grow up.
Yeah.
Growing up in a household with a father who's a urologist changes everything. But for most people, sexuality is not something that's that conversational, and people are, they don't talk. But when you do bring it out into the open, and you find, oh, that happens to you, or you've been through that,
so relatable.
There people, you can connect with people that way. And there's no reason people shouldn't.
Your dad gave the sex talk at your elementary school.
The most embarrassing thing ever was because my father's a urologist. I don't know if they did this at your school.
They did at everybody's school.
But they have, they separate the boys and the girls, and they explain like to the boys wet dreams and the girls getting your period and blah, blah. Well, my dad was the person they would bring in to talk to the boys. So meanwhile, I'm already being bullied.
Right.
Because people find me, people realize there's something different about me, or that I might be a little more effeminate than some, So I'm already being bullied. And then it's like, my dad's coming in to talk about wet dreams and penises. Let me just tell you.
Yeah.
That you just want to like die in your chair. I mean, I talk about it in the book, but...
Yeah. No, it's fantastic.
Did you grow up in a conservative area? I mean, what is...
No, I grew up in West Palm Beach, Florida.
Okay. So can I ask what... because you were talking about how hesitant you were about coming out and all that stuff. What was it? Because it seems like you had a pretty open family.
I did, but and very liberal, liberal, people. But I was bullied from the time I was about 5, and the first time that I was called a name or a gay slur was by an adult.
Oh shit!
At the camp that I was the day camp that I was going to, and so it was like from that moment I sort of realized, okay, if I need to get by, whatever this thing is that they're calling me, I don't really understand what it is, but it's not good, and I'm being teased for it, I'm being made fun of for it, and I need to make sure that nobody who cares about me knows that this is happening, because I don't want them to feel that way about me. So I don't want them to, if they love me, but then they find out that this is what everyone else.
So you thought it would change? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
So I sort of resolved at that moment that
you even thought it was going to change how your family perceived you.
Right. Because what I say is that you never know how close to home is too close to home. Yeah. My parents were always very accepting, but you never know when it's in your family, are they going to be as accepting?
Oh, I found out.
They were. Yeah. They were. But I lived in that fear because I had such a close relationship with them. So I didn't come out until I was 30. I mean, I was a virgin until I was 31.
Oh, wow.
I made up for lost time.
You did. You found porn people and escorts.
I think
and
page 100 to 200 will tell you all about that.
That's so interesting.
Yeah, that's why the book is so good.
Yeah, so no experimenting or anything sexually before 30?
Well, when I was in kindergarten, there was the playing doctor thing. Yeah.
Yeah, but nothing college, nothing.
Nothing. Wow. Not even a kiss. My first kiss was at 31.
What?
Yeah.
That's so interesting.
I know. We're going to dive into so much more sex talk. We're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back. This is Sexy Funny Raw, the podcast with me, adult film star and comedian Silvia Saige, here to discuss what you've only dared to ask Google. Undress, unzip, and unwind. The party starts now.
So get right into your sex.
This show just flew by. I had no idea how close we even were. I still thought we had another 15 minutes left, but we don't. So I'm going to dive right in because I need to know. These are what the show is about. Okay. The last thing that you Googled that you thought was a little embarrassing for you, sexually, and just because it's only things that you would think to ask Google. And I will tell you, my last one was concerning, and this is why it's embarrassing, the discharge that comes out of my vagina. And I thought I had an excessive amount of discharge discharge. And so I was like Googling, like, why do some people have a certain amount and others don't? Is it like an infection? Do I have a yeast infection that isn't itchy? Because yeast infections, a woman can tell immediately. They're very painful. But this wasn't that. It wasn't accompanied with anything else. And so I Googled, and it just turns out when a woman is close to her menstrual period, an excess of discharge happens, and it's just a natural thing. But I Googled this at 35 because I was like, is there something wrong with me? And I wouldn't even ask a friend that because I didn't want to be like, how much stuff's falling out of your pussy every day? You know, like, mine's excessive.
I was going to text you that this morning. I was like, Silvia, can you let me know what's coming out of your pussy?
Right,
today?
exactly.
I like to know about your discharge.
I need to know how much is dropping out of you on a regular basis. So, yeah, that was the last thing I Googled.
Well, I'm going to let Michael tackle it because I just asked my dad.
You asked your dad, yeah. You have no qualms.
No, I don't.
My buddy and I got in an argument a couple days ago about if marijuana affects the amount of sperm or how it affects sperm.
Does it?
It does, and it turns out it increases the ability of sperm. I don't know the terms of
like
it.
Make it swim faster?
Yeah, so I always thought that marijuana decreased
So did
the odds of you being able to get somebody pregnant and this and that. And then I Googled it because we were arguing about it. I was like, no, dude, I'll fucking prove it. And I looked it up and I was like, oh, it increases yeah.
Oh, damn.
Does it change the amount, or
it doesn't change the amount,
sort
but
of the power?
It increases the likability.
Okay.
Wow.
I always thought that you as a dude, you always hear rumors like, well, you can't get pregnant in water.
Right. Right.
You can't get pregnant if you're drinking Mountain Dew and
Right.
smoking weed.
Right.
And like, these are the most hillbilly fucking ideas I've ever heard. And it turns out they're all true. Like, it doesn't matter.
Well, actually, I believe that to be true because Stoner Rob is the biggest pothead I know, and he has 5 kids. So
there you go.
It potents your sperm.
See?
All right, guys, we
You
learned
look like
something
somebody
today.
who has great sperm. The minute I met you, I just had that feeling.
Taste test? That was a line on my movie yesterday, so I just had to drop it in, by the way. Okay, so thank you so much, guys. The show flew by. Thank you so much for coming on. Tell the people where they can find you.
Everything's at Malone Comedy. So you have Twitter, Instagram, even my website. Everything is Malone Comedy.
Awesome. All
And
right.
I'm at Josh Sabarra.
God, they're so simple yet so interesting.
Right.
Isn't it amazing, you guys? And of course, you can find me, Silvia Saige, on all my platforms, SilviaSige. Thank you guys so much for another great episode. We'll see you soon. Thanks for tuning in for another episode of Sexy Funny Raw. Find us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Sexy Funny Raw. Watch and listen to all of our episodes at sexyfunnyraw.com. Making the airwaves sexy, one show at a time. Until next time, stay sexy, bitches.